Do you have any idea how much I've had to endure while you're out during the day? But Susan takes care of you at lunchtime and I have my job. The thought of quitting my job and being at the beck and call from my father-in-law, Taylor, 24/7 sent a shudder through me. I knew right then and there that I absolutely couldn't give up my work. But Taylor was relentless. He had clearly anticipated this kind of reaction from me. What I miscalculated was my husband, Walter's response. "Don't you think it's sad that he can't get around on his own? Surely you could do this much for him." But the doctor said Taylor needs to do as much as he can on his own, for the sake of his health. Dad doesn't seem to see it that way. Just do whatever you can for him, okay? Walter's tone made it sound like I was just making excuses because I didn't want to help. Looks like I'm really going to have to give up my freedom. As if to confirm my worst fears, a divorce petition arrived in the mail from Walter, who was away on a business trip. Okay. I'll submit this right away. But what about the kids? Are you really okay with this? I'm fine. Because Walter is. My name is Ashley Carter, a 42-year-old housewife. I'm the mom of a son in 7th grade and a daughter in 6th grade. I work a part-time job for 4 hours a day. After graduating from college and starting my career, I was 23 when I met Walter through an introduction from a colleague. He was 26, a rising elite at a major trading company. He was urbane, smart, and a great conversationalist. I liked him from the moment we met. So when he asked me out, I felt like I was dreaming. I was truly happy. After dating for 2 years, we got married. I continued working, but when I got pregnant for the first time, I developed preeclampsia. You and our child are the most important things to me. Why don't you quit your job for now, and then you can go back to work once the kid is a bit older? It was a job I loved, and I agonized over the decision. But I needed to be hospitalized for a while, and I knew it would cause problems for my workplace. I decided to accept Walter's proposal and resigned. I gave birth to our eldest son, Cody, without complications, and our daughter, Megan, was born the following year. I became a mom of 2, and our happy days continued. But then, something happened that brought an end to those blissful times. 12 years into our marriage, when Cody and Megan were in their preteens, Taylor collapsed from an illness. Fortunately, his life was spared, but he was left with lingering effects that required care. I don't think Mom can handle this on her own. What do you think about moving in together? I honestly struggled with the idea. My in-laws lived about a 30-minute drive away, and we would visit as a family from time to time, but I always felt uncomfortable around Taylor. He was an old-fashioned man who made no secret of his belief that women should devote themselves to serving their husbands. It's good that you quit your job as soon as you had a child. Women these days are too impudent, wanting to keep working even after getting married, he said with a smile when I left my job. I had my reservations about Taylor, but my mother-in-law, Susan, was a truly kind person. The thought of her having to care for Taylor all by herself was heartbreaking. In my day, we believed that once you got married, you should quit your job and focus on your family. But times are different now. I really respect you for taking pride in your work. Susan interjected before Taylor could say anything when he scowled upon hearing that I would continue working after we got married. From then on, whenever there was an issue, she would subtly come to my defense. Thanks to her, I managed to avoid any major conflicts with Taylor. And now, I will be moving in with them to care for Taylor. I agonized over the decision considerably, but in the end, I agreed to it. Susan was already over 70 years old, and I was worried about her, too. And I thought that Taylor, now that he was in a disabled state, surely wouldn't be as overbearing as before. Plus, Walter was always the type to consider my position and properly deal with any issues that came up. Or so I thought when I made my choice. But I was too naive.
So when are you going to quit your job?
Taylor asked with a look of displeasure as soon as he found out I was working part-time after we moved in together.
When you quit your job after having Cody, I thought maybe this daughter-in-law had some promise.
So much for that. It seemed like Taylor expected me to be home all day, constantly catering to his every need. Every afternoon except Sundays, I leave for work. It's a job I've been doing for a long time, and I have no intention of quitting. But Taylor doesn't like that one bit. When we decided to move in together, we renovated the in-laws' house to make it barrier-free. My in-laws are quite well off. Their house is old but sits on a large plot of land. With his indoor wheelchair, Taylor can freely move around the house. He should be able to go wherever he wants. We even installed handrails throughout the house. There are no steps, so just holding onto the rails and walking should help with his rehabilitation, but Taylor refuses to move on his own at all. Even to grab a single item, he calls for either Susan or me.
Taylor, moving around a bit on your own would be good for your rehab, you know?
Shut up. You're just a daughter-in-law.
Can't you listen to your elders? I don't want to move, so don't you dare order me around.
I think it's Taylor who doesn't want to move, but he just uses people like his personal servants. But Taylor is the least of my worries. I was prepared for this kind of behavior from him. The real problem turned out to be Walter. The poor man can't move. Is it really so hard for you to do this much for him?
But it's for Taylor's own good. The doctor said he should do as much as he can by himself.
Well, Dad doesn't seem to think so. Just do whatever you can for him, okay? He says this as if I'm just making excuses because I don't want to do it. We used to be united as husband and wife in raising our children, but Walter stopped trying to hide his attitude of dumping everything on me. Mom is here too, you know. I'm leaving Dad to you too, and when it comes to the kids, the mother is always the most important, after all. Whenever I try to discuss anything with him, he acts like it's not his job from the start. When it was just the four of us, we were busy but happy. In the midst of our hectic days, once the kids were asleep, it was finally our time as a couple. On days when Walter got home early, we would have drinks together or watch popular dramas. But ever since moving in with my in-laws, we never have time like that anymore. I wake up early in the morning to prepare breakfast. After seeing Walter and the kids off, I take care of Taylor before heading to my part-time job. Susan handles lunch, but on my way back from work, I make groceries and dinner. Then I take turns with Susan tending to Taylor. This is what's truly troublesome. First of all, Taylor constantly complains about me working.
Do you have any idea how much I've had to endure while you're out during the day? But Susan takes care of you at lunchtime and I have my job. That's why I'm telling you to quit that job. Walter spoils you, so you're getting too full of yourself.
If I quit my job, would I be ordered around and worked to the bone 24/7 by Taylor? The thought makes me shudder. I absolutely don't want to quit. I'm sorry. Susan says to me, careful not to let Taylor hear.
He was always an overbearing person, but ever since he got sick and lost his freedom of movement, he's become even more arrogant.
I figured as much. He probably wants to use Susan and me as his personal servants so he can feel superior to us. He thinks he's in a position to give orders while we're meant to follow them. But it's enough that I have to put up with it. Ashley, you should do more of what you want, Susan says, as if she's given up on everything. Of course, I have no intention of sacrificing myself for Taylor. But I want Susan to live more freely too. How can I get her to understand that? Whenever I think about it, I get so frustrated I can't stand it. As our life living with my in-laws passed the 1-year mark, the situation grew even more serious. First of all, Taylor's health took a noticeable turn for the worse. Even though he was practically bedridden, his mouth still worked just fine, and he continued to berate Susan and me.
Can't you do things more efficiently? It's because you don't put your heart into it that I'm suffering. And you call yourself a daughter-in-law?
Perhaps frustrated with his immobile body, Taylor constantly hurled such words at us. Susan would try to shield me from Taylor's abuse, but then he would turn physically violent.
The women in this house are truly useless. After spending decades married to a woman like you, this is the state I'm in. I'm really an unlucky man.
Saying this, perhaps realizing his own physical weakness, he would throw whatever he could get his hands on, like newspapers and magazines, at Susan. Of course, I talked back to Taylor many times, but each time, his abuse towards Susan would worsen, so at some point, I just started silently tending to him. I appealed to Walter about this, but since he wasn't actually the one caring for Taylor, he turned a blind eye.
Don't look to me for help. I'm leaving Dad's care to you and Mom, so figure it out.
That's all he would say, brushing me off.
Work is really busy for me right now. I hate to do this, but until things settle down, but I'm counting on you.
Once he brings up work, I can't say anything more. The truth is, the renovation costs for my in-laws' house were quite steep.
Our savings have been completely drained, so I need to work hard to build them back up.
He's right, so I have no choice but to give up on consulting Walter about Taylor. Things have worsened. Perhaps from watching Susan and me silently endure Taylor's treatment, Cody started to behave terribly toward us as well.
Just do it now, you're so slow for a woman.
I tried to rationalize that it was because he had started middle school and his environment had changed. But I couldn't convince myself that was all it was. He would hurl such harsh words at Susan, me, and even Megan.
What kind of way is that to talk? Apologize. Shut up. Don't you talk back to a man, woman.
Saying this, he would throw things and slam the door loudly. Cody was the spitting image of a young Taylor. Though he's my own child, gradually, my feelings of love were overtaken by disgust, and now, I rarely speak to him unless absolutely necessary. Even when I asked Walter to scold Cody for his terrible behavior, he wouldn't take it seriously.
Cody's in 7th grade, right? That's just how it is at that age. It's a rebellious phase. I remember going through it too. Do you really think that after seeing his attitude? I saw it, but it wasn't a big deal. It's not like he's getting physically violent.
It's true that Cody hasn't been physically violent yet. But can we really say that making a huge racket and throwing things isn't a form of violence?
So you're saying we should just ignore it until he does get physically violent? That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying to just keep an eye on him.
Walter says this as if it's not a big deal. I realize that no matter what I say to this man, it's pointless. Around the time I was living in an almost resigned state, our life changed once again. Taylor passed away. It was sudden, 2 years after we started living together. His illness had worsened, and it was the result of him having a seizure. After a hasty funeral, we returned to our normal life. Our normal life. What kind of life was that, anyway? In these 2 years, I had completely forgotten. If the life we had before moving in with my in-laws, before caring for Taylor, was normal, then the life we have now is definitely not normal. Waking up in the morning, preparing breakfast, seeing Walter and the kids off before going to my part-time job. Making groceries on the way home, preparing dinner, finishing up housework, and going to bed once night falls. If this is what you call a normal life, then we've returned to a normal life now. But my heart remains unsettled. When I look at Susan, she has the same expression.
What should we do from here on?
Susan asks me with a troubled look. It seems I've reached a point where I need to make a lot of decisions. Cody was still the same little Taylor as always. No, as if to make up for Taylor's absence, his words and actions grew worse by the day.
Shut up! Don't boss me around!
The other day, he finally shoved Megan while saying that.
What have you done?
Fortunately, Megan fell onto the sofa when she was pushed, so she wasn't hurt.
It's her fault! Megan had the nerve to scold me. Women should just shut up and listen to what men say.
All Megan did was tell Cody to throw away his own trash from the snacks he ate in the living room.
Cody, why don't you try throwing away your own snack wrappers? Even little kids don't do that.
When she said that, he yelled at her and shoved her. Cody is completely out of control now. How did he turn into this kind of child? I told Walter that Cody had finally laid hands on family, but the response was the same as always.
He was probably just messing around. Every family has fights like that, don't they? This wasn't on that level. Cody is only going to get bigger and stronger. Please say something to him before it gets worse.
Okay, I got it.
I'll do it when I have time. Oh right, I'm going on a business trip starting tomorrow.
Leaving those words behind, Walter left on an extended business trip the next day. As I watched his retreating figure, I quietly muttered to myself, "Looks like it's time to make some serious moves." As I was contemplating what to do, divorce papers arrived in the mail from Walter, who was away on his trip. A plain brown envelope. I opened it, wondering what it would be, and there it was. My hand holding the divorce papers trembled involuntarily.
I bet he thinks I'm in shock.
That's not it at all. Walter's attitude was so blatantly outrageous that I couldn't help but laugh, making my hand shake. In other words, now that caring for Taylor is over, I'm no longer needed. He's really easy to understand.
I wonder how much more he plans to make a fool of me.
I should just sign it for now.
Okay. I'll submit it right away. But what about the kids? Are you really okay with this?
As I was humming and filling out the divorce papers, Susan asked with a worried look.
I'm fine. After all, Walter doesn't know anything.
There, it's done. I'd love to go submit it right now, but that would be too hasty. I'll do what I need to do properly first, then submit it on my own timing. In any case, getting my hands on this is huge.
For now, I plan to wait for him to come home and have a proper talk.
That's probably for the best.
It's a shame, but he made his own bed, so there's nothing to be done.
Susan made a sympathetic face, but it wasn't directed at me, who had been asked for a divorce, but at her own foolish son. A few days later, Walter returned from his business trip.
"Oh, you signed it, didn't you?"
Those were his first words.
"Before that, there's something I want to ask. Why do you want a divorce?"
When I asked calmly, Walter looked a bit surprised. He probably thought I would cry and scream, or cling to him. But too bad, I won't do anything like that. I just want to hear what reason he'll give.
"What exactly do you dislike so much that you want a divorce?"
I tried rephrasing my question. In this way, it might make it easier for him to give a concrete answer. Walter is still staring at my face. He seems to be getting a bit flustered.
"Why do you think?"
He's using a cowardly tactic. It's hard for him to say it himself, so he wants me to answer and somehow seize control of the conversation.
"I'm asking because I don't know. Please don't answer a question with a question."
The fluster on Walter's face is clearly visible. It's because you've been indifferent to me. Indifferent? When have I ever done such a thing? You decided everything about the kids on your own.